All right, skip table of contents. Go to chapter 1. High dose vitamin C, the universal antimicrobial. Don't you dare say cure. We put cancer in remission, get heart disease, diabetes, and arthritis under control, but we don't really cure anything. Considering the trillions of dollars and decades of time already spent on pharmaceutical research, shouldn't there be a cure for man's most dreaded conditions? Medical people do not use the word cure, and those who are selling supplements dare not use it. Advertising language for supplements cannot use the word cure, even when referring to a nutrient deficiency disease like scurvy, a vitamin C deficiency, or beriberi, a vitamin B deficiency. Even with overwhelming scientific evidence to show that a food or supplement can cure, prevent, or even help treat a disease, the FDA considers a reference to that evidence as a drug claim. A food or supplement seller making such claims can be subject to the following: search and or seizure of bank accounts, search and or seizure of all records, seizure of product, substantial fines, time in prison. On the other hand, drug companies don't ever promise a cure. One has to wonder whether they are even looking for one. Consult the medical reference book found in the office of most MDs, and you'll find there is no effective treatment for the majority, if not all, of viral infections. In layman's terms, the standard protocol for a viral infectious disease victim is make patient comfortable, hope, pray, patient's immune system prevails. How criminal when one of the most studied, safest, least expensive, wildly effective antimicrobials has been available for decades. High-dose vitamin C has been proven to be a successful treatment, and in many cases it's a complete cure for most viral and many bacterial infections. So why does it continue to be ignored, ridiculed, shunned, penalized? 4 apparently untreatable deadly conditions. Unfortunately, there are 4 deadly conditions that seem to be unaffected by high-dose vitamin C. Ignorance, cynicism, fear of being proven wrong, greed. Lest I be accused of overstating my point, I offer a recent example that was brought to light in 2 powerful New Zealand 60 Minutes health documentaries that aired in 2010. The first, called Living Proof, told the story of a New Zealand farmer who contracted an extremely severe case of H1N1. Medical tests confirmed the diagnosis of swine flu, whiteout pneumonia, and hairy cell leukemia. His lungs were so filled with infection that he had to be hooked to a device called ECMO that bypasses and functions for the lungs outside the body. After nearly 4 weeks in an induced coma with aggressive medical intervention, his condition was no better. The intensive care specialists met to consider Alan Smith's prognosis. Their conclusion was that, quote, with his lung failure, Mr. Smith cannot survive, end quote. After a second meeting, the same specialist wrote, the group is in unanimous agreement that Mr. Smith should be removed from ECMO and be allowed to die. Continuing is only prolonging his inevitable death. The family protested that the doctors hadn't tried everything. They vehemently lobbied for the administration of high-dose intravenous vitamin C. 2 days before Alan Smith's scheduled removal from life support, the doctors consented to allow the vitamin C therapy, even while stating, we are all in agreement that vitamin C will be of no benefit. After only 2 25-gram infusions of vitamin C, X-rays revealed a significant clearing of the lungs. The vitamin C therapy was continued at a rate of 100 grams per day. Within a few days, Alan had rapidly improved to the point where he could breathe on his own, and he was removed from ECMO. Then Alan's condition started to deteriorate. When questioned, the hospital admitted that the vitamin C had been discontinued. His family pushed for a resumption of the therapy. The doctors capitulated, but only continued at a meager 2 grams per day. The patient did start to improve again, but at a very slow rate. Why the doctors resumed the vitamin C at a dose that was only 2% of the earlier beneficial dose defies logic if Mr. Smith's welfare was the only significant concern. When Mr. Smith improved to the point he could be moved to a hospital closer to home, the new set of doctors again discontinued the C therapy. Predictably, Alan started to worsen. This time, the family had to hire an attorney to force a resumption of the C therapy, but the new hospital would only administer 2 grams per day. Even so, the patient started to recover. As soon as Alan was able to swallow, his family fed him large doses of an oral liposome-encapsulated vitamin C. To the doctor's amazement, Alan walked out of the hospital several weeks before they thought it possible. Furthermore, there was no longer evidence of hairy cell leukemia. Perhaps the most amazing part of this story is that those in the medical community with bedside seats to this amazing drama were unconvinced that vitamin C had any part in Alan Smith's return to health. One reviewing physician who refused to believe vitamin C had any positive effect in Alan Smith's recovery theorized that his turnaround could just as reasonably be attributed to the passing of a bus outside Alan's hospital room. In another H1N1 case covered by 60 Minutes, a 25-year-old Australian woman was also put on an ECMO machine. Her brother Mark had seen the earlier segment, Living Proof, and decided to track down the Smith family to get more information about high-dose vitamin C. Convinced that the therapy might help his sister, Mark pushed the hospital to administer intravenous vitamin C. They finally relented. As in the Alan Smith case, her heavily infected lungs started to clear with a couple of treatments. Finally, the patient improved to the point that the ECMO was discontinued. At the same time, after convincing the patient's mother that its continued administration could somehow be dangerous, the doctors discontinued the vitamin C. Her health rapidly deteriorated, and within a few days, she passed away. A majority of physicians blindly accept the false notion that there is no evidence and there are no studies showing the effectiveness of high-dose vitamin C in the treatment of anything but scurvy. The fact is, there are thousands of studies and much evidence. Yet, even when the proof magnificently displays itself right before their eyes, most in the medical community refuse to see it. The obvious reality did not escape the attention of the general population, however. These documentaries have created such a groundswell of outrage in New Zealand that the people are forcing a radical change in the way medicine is practiced there. Once the 60 Minutes documentaries were put on the internet, people all over the world began to hear the truth. Coincidentally, or not, shortly after all this attention, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, FDA, prevented the company in America that supplied the intravenous vitamin C shown in both programs from producing anymore. This draconian action transcends ignorance and cynicism. A more malicious restriction of high-dose vitamin C appears to be on the way. See Chapter 8. Dr. Ian Brighthope, a nutritional and environmental medicine specialist familiar with the power of high-dose vitamin C, summarized it best in the 60 Minutes documentary.